Welcome back to the black hole of real estate. And on this week's edition, I wanted to talk about where single family home prices are landing right now in the Daytona Beach area specifically. When you look at the June numbers of this year, it's over 460 sales. And compared to last year when there was 442, it's a little bit more, which is surprising to many. We feel there's less sales, and there have been sales for more money this year, but less sales. So now we're starting to see something a little bit different. There's more sales this month than last June, and there are more sales when you look at May of this year compared to May of last year, 478 to 407. So it's a couple months in a row where we're having more sales. Quite a bit more. What's interesting is if you look at May of this year, it was 478. In June of this year, 461, super close. Now, I do notice that the median sales price in May was 378 and June 377.5. So pretty much the same thing. I wouldn't say that it's a trend that, hey, we're going to see lower prices. I don't know that 500 bucks is anything more than perhaps an anomaly. Now, if we do look back to last year, we're going to find that the price was in the 385 range, so a little bit off in a year over year, maybe 1 or 2%. Not quite a market crash, and we could very well see that price tick up based on the inventory levels and the appetite of the consumer. We'll find out. What we're largely noticing, the sales are holding as far as the number. And the price has been holding. So we didn't see, I think now we've really moved on from that market's going to crash and be cut in half in 2008. I think that's largely off the table for most people's conversation. We see the Fed raising interest rates again, and it hasn't had the effect that one would think because there's more sales. We've seen interest rates go from 2.5% to the 7% range, and yet we're seeing more home sales for about the same money. So it didn't really erode purchasing power because it's about the same. When we're having a 4 or 5% increase in interest rates and the prices are within 1% of last year, what that's telling me is we're not eroding purchasing power or buyers' desire to purchase at those price point levels. And with the number of properties being sold the same or even quite a bit more, it hasn't done anything to slow down the market. And I think that's going to be the story that we're just going to keep talking about. Now, if you looked at the whole year of 23, you'd find out about 2,250 sales locally compared to 25 and change last year. So about 250 less sales, maybe 300, not quite. Median sales price, all year to date in 2022 was 372.5 last year, 373,290 this year. So the median sales price is up almost $2,000. Smaller amount of sales, but now it's evergreen. Last 2 months have been increasing, so that is, maybe it's a trend. Do we see a third month in a row when the July numbers come out and are verifiable? We'll see. The inventory is increasing locally. Now across the country, there's places where there's far less inventory than last year, and there is a study that's shown where in January there was an increase of almost 70% of the available homes nationwide. That's shrunk down about 15% more. So the available inventory bubble, if you will, the increases have been eroded away. Now locally, a little different story. If you look at the month of June in 23, it's more than 1,600 homes to choose from in this area compared to last year, and there's just a little over 1,300. So it's more. And even if you look at the May inventory of the high 1,500s, the 1,600 and change in June was more. So there is an uptick in inventory. Year to date, there's been over 4,000 properties, over 4,300 properties at some point were available for sale compared to this year to date last year of just under 3,900. So there is almost 10% more inventory available locally, bucking the national trend, so to speak. Now we'll see, will the buyers' appetite increase to absorb that inventory and push it towards negative, like so much of the country? That remains to be seen. Not something that I'm ready to go out and make a declaration But nationally, you're absolutely feeling it. Now, of that available inventory, the breakdown, it's an inexact science, but my crystal ball is showing about 40% single family homes, maybe close to 20% condos, and new construction. It's been pushing 40% of the available inventory all year long. That's an interesting statistic. And what it's telling you is what you might already know, that a home seller that's been really nervous about going on the market over the last several years due to low inventory, so yeah, my house will sell, what am I going to buy? Well, now what we're finding is that the replacement homes are new construction homes, an ever increasing amount of homes that are being built to satisfy the consumer demand. And I'm not sure what the inflection point looks like or when it occurs, but when you're sitting on a mortgage at 2 or 3% and you're going to sell that property and buy back in at 6 or 7%, that's a pretty big leap, like a really big leap for a lot of people. And they're asking themselves, so I like the house and I'm at 2%. Do I love the next house? That's going to be more money and a higher interest rate. You're seeing some payment factors that are now really causing homeowners, would-be sellers, to just economically, it's not making sense to them to move at this time. Now, if they're selling and the house is free and clear and they're buying with cash, that's off the table. And that's a lot of the activity we see is cash buying. Or they've had so much equity that the mortgage they have, they're borrowing $100,000. So the difference between 3 and 7% when it's a $100,000 loan, I mean, it's a chunk of change, but it's not as dramatic as when you've got a $500,000 size loan moving from 2 to 7%. And that's, now we start to see the pockets of where things are moving and why. The cash buyer largely unaffected by the interest rates. The seller who becomes a buyer moving from 2 to 6 or 7%, that's an issue, especially in higher numbers, because if they're moving up, they're moving the price up and the rate up. That's a pretty big pill to swallow for them. So we will see where this leads, but right now all the numbers are saying, look, we're pointing north. Sales are up, prices about the same, and inventory is up a little bit. So where do we take this next? We're into this hurricane season when things can speed up or slow down dramatically. It's pretty wet these days. Does it affect sales? A little bit. If you're out looking at property and you want to see the beach and all you really actually end up seeing, that the water you see isn't the ocean, it's the rain. But it comes and goes rather quickly. Booking the vacations and the showing times into Florida this time of year is always interesting because there's between the influx of people for the summer and vacations before, we're pushing into August. So now we're going to see the back to school phase hit. My suspicion is you're going to see a lot of closings in the month of August when properties went under contract in June and July. But this is going to be a really interesting month. What I'm really curious about is the activities happening right now are going to be the September and October closings. That, to me, is something that's going to get super, super interesting. And I wonder what those are going to look like. Right now, we do see an increase in activity level. Certainly calls to our office are up quite a bit just in the last week or 10 days. And I'm not sure if there's any one factor that's causing that to happen, but there is a renewed interest. And I say renewed because we do, it's on a weekly basis, like a busy week, slow week, super busy. What is that looking like? There was a flurry over the last couple of weeks. And I can't really put my finger on why that happened. I just know that there was this flurry of activity locally. If there's anything to talk about right now, I know we talked about, hurricane preparedness and what that looks like and getting those items in the household ready to go, and the generators, and if you need sandbags and provisions and food and batteries and flashlights, those things. Some of the hidden things that we see right now, if you're thinking going on the market, is what is your landscaping looking like? Are your trees in good conditions? Are they cut back? That's one of the things that we sometimes forget about. We were doing some traveling, personally, and we saw a lot of trees and stuff down in the sideways as we were traveling, from, I will just say, from the Northeast down back to Florida, and there was quite a few storms. So if you have tree limbs that need to be cut or branches. Those are something to think about as the storms and the winds come through these areas. Also to think about if you're looking at properties, just knowing that there could be, tree limbs or something that might affect or impair your driving along the way. So just maybe a safety tip along the way as you're looking at properties. But I'd also be looking at that if I was purchasing a property. Is that a tree that needs to be trimmed or cut down? Is it hanging over the roof? Are the branches um, creating a situation where the roof is becoming discolored or damaged perhaps from sap or something that could affect the roof? Is the water going to run towards the house or away from the house? Are there mulch beds that are overflowing, pushing, or trapping water at the house line? These are all things that you wouldn't normally think about, but I wanted to add that today because it's come up in a few conversations in the inspections recently. Even some people are having their homes painted, making sure that they dig the dirt away from the house to get all the way down to the edge of the stucco and sealing everything to put that protective barrier between the mulch beds and the water and the rain coming off the roof from the gutters and whatnot. Is there a way for that water to get underneath the house in those areas? So if you were considering a purchase and you're noticing these things, if the house is painted, hey, did they actually dig all the way down to make sure to seal the whole house? And I bring these up for the consumers that are looking at purchases right now and looking at home inspections. It's just something that's easily overlooked, and it just occurred to me that we haven't talked about it here in this space for a little bit, and it was good to reintroduce that idea. The last thing I want to talk about today is the Airbnb business. And in some areas, they're talking about it. People are still vacationing, but I think the hotels have gotten a little bit competitive right now and offered some packages. That there are some pockets that are talking about Airbnb business being flat, or maybe even a little bit off because of the choices out there. I know that we recently stayed at one, and it was set up. It was a train caboose, and I think the themed Airbnb is really surging ahead for that experience when people are traveling, and it's really interesting how that's taking place right now. So if you're in that short-term rental business and you're looking for a little bit of a boost, redesigning the interior or making a theme out of it is alive and well, and I believe it's separating some of the rentals from the competition, so to speak, because there is increased activity on the parts of hotels and other deal areas that could affect some of the revenues for the short-term rentals. And wanted to bring that up. Well, listen, I hope that you got some good information out of this week, and you keep tuning in, and I look forward to talking with you again very soon on the Black Hole of Real Estate.